Hello and welcome to another edition of Outbound for Dummies. Outbound for Dummies, a series of learning sessions from Outplay, brings you the essential tips and tricks to master your sales process and helps you achieve your sales targets. Hello, I'm Praveen. I'm in the founder's office at Outplay, and I'm also part of the GDM function at Outplay, which is exactly why I'm here today. Because, yes, all of us love to build outbound functions. And today, the topic is going to be how to build an outbound team from scratch. We have with us Ryan Lailler. Hi, Ryan. Happy to have you today for us.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm a huge fan of Outplay, and I appreciate this opportunity.
Lovely. Thanks, Ryan. Ryan is a CEO at SalesGevity and Techselect and talks about marketing, leadership, and of course, sales. You know what intrigued me and what made me fall in love with Ryan and wanted him for this call? He calls himself a student of outbound business development. I mean, if you go to his profile, you see, he has an amazing list of companies that he has worked for as head of sales. And when he calls him a student, I'm a big fan. All right, lovely. So let's get started. I'll tell you why I picked this topic, Ryan, and for the others. I remember 20 years ago when I first joined a startup, was building some piece of software, a software product. Yeah. I was on the road knocking door to door and selling that software product, right? Yeah. If you remember, we had a telephone directory. Yeah. Yep. And need to search those phone numbers, call them and book meetings. Nothing was, a direct email or nothing. We never had a tool. CRM had just started and things like that. And of course, it's evolved today. It's far more mature. But is outbound the way to go? And how do we do it? That's exactly why we are here today with Ryan. Let me straight away jump into it, Ryan. My first question, when a company is starting out, right, when do you think a company should build an outbound team? And why is it significant, right, for, building an outbound team for businesses today?
Yeah, sure. Well, are we talking about for an early stage company like a startup?
Typically for startups or very small and mid-sized companies, yes.
Yeah, I think startups should wait as long as possible before they build an outbound team and remain founder-led outbound or founder-led sales for as long as they possibly can.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you can't hire a BDR person or a BDR role for the business. But that BDR role initially, I wouldn't assign the task of booking meetings right away. I would put that person in charge of interviewing potential customers or what we perceive to be our ICP, collecting data from the field, testing brand-based value messaging, and bringing that collection of data back to the founders so you can eventually hone in on, okay, we've got this product. Here's who it's right for or it fits for or with. And let's start to craft our outbound messaging around that and then try to get some traction there, particularly on the sales pipeline side afterwards, to see if it's sticking. And then from there, you can build an outbound onboarding program, a playbook, and then start to scale that and get more people and start to build your traditional BDR or outbound team.
Lovely. Yeah, I agree with you, right? The first outbound call is usually made by the CEO, probably to his network, to his friends, correct? And like you said, would you also probably summarize and say the first team, the first BDR, SDR team can also help to identify or understand product market fit?
Absolutely. These are the people that are on the front lines, right? But what I would say is that if they're going to go out and try to find out or figure out what product market fit is, they do have to be armed and equipped with the questions that we need the answers to. That's going to come from the founders. And that's going to be just hypothesis, right? We think our product is applicable to this buyer persona in this company, in this market. What questions do we need answered to prove that or not prove that, and then pivot or not pivot? So as long as those SDRs are on the front lines with the questions that they need to ask and get the answers to, you'll be able to rapidly collect quality information and make some pretty quick decisions.
Absolutely, right. Rapidly collect that information rather than, waiting for users to come back. That's a good word here. Imagine this, Ryan. Let's assume that I'm a founder. I do my initial calls, but I have too many things to juggle around and I feel that I need to build an outbound team from scratch. All right. Yeah. So what would you say is the core essence of building that outbound team? And what would be the reason, or what is the why that I need to answer for broadening that outreach and creating that kind of impact?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I'm a founder, right, of SalesGevity.
Yep.
Most, if not all, of our outbound prospecting on behalf of SalesGevity is done by me. I do all of it myself still, while managing a team, while dealing with customers and clients and helping them grow and get their outbound machine running as well. So, for me, I would prefer if the founder had some sort of onboarding process. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's got to be something. Because if I'm a busy founder, what that tells me, or what it should tell me, is I'm not going to have time to manage these people, this person, or this team.
Yeah.
So I have to equip them with the go-to sections of our intranet or a Google Drive somewhere where there's going to be information that they could take action on and leverage and learn from, and always go back to, maybe even give them the autonomy to update themselves so the playbook grows as they're hearing and learning things. Make it a contribution type environment, a contribution type culture in that sense. Because if you're a CEO who's going out and building SDRs or building a team for the first time, you just have to admit to yourself, you don't have time to lead and manage these people. And quite frankly, I haven't met a CEO yet that we've worked with at SalesGevity that even knows how to do BDR work themselves, never mind manage and build out a team. So that's my advice on that side. Yeah.
All right. Okay. I mean, because that kind of rolls down to the next question, right? How early, or how soon should you have a manager? Or if I may ask you, if you don't mind, at SalesGevity, or when you consult for companies, what typically would you outline as a process, a step-by-step process for building an outbound team from ground up, right? Like you said, right? The CEO does some bit of work, but then he kind of feels that he needs a team. So ground up, what typically would be the step-by-step process for building that outbound team?
Yeah, it's a great question. So let's talk about what companies normally do. They go out and hire 2, 3, 4, 5 individuals, and they say, okay, you're a BDR or an SDR. Your job is outbound. Here's your tech stack. Go get meetings and book them for me or my co-founder, or maybe like our first salesperson. Typical, like that's the output, or that's the goal, the desired outcome. But before that, there has to be some sort of process and mechanics in place that will work to actually get that outcome. My preference, and something that I've done in the past as a sales leader, is I like to operate in pods and create SDR pods. It's not a new concept. It's been around for a very long time. But what you can do inside that pod in terms of maneuvering and manicuring the specific roles, or the specificity of what that person in that SDR role should be doing, that can be altered and that can be modernized. So my new approach, and the way that I've been looking at this, is if you go and hire 3 BDRs, yes, they're all expected to prospect, but each of them has to be a specialist. Just like if you had a sports team, only one person can be a quarterback, only one person can be a forward, only one person can be a center. You have to, I think I did football, soccer, and basketball as my analogy there, but just to cover as many sports as I could. But I would have one person just be the researcher, the deep analytical thinker, the person that goes out and does the research on companies, builds the lists, gets the data under control, and another person who is responsible for email copy, phone scripts, objection handling, and that sort of stuff. And then they have another person that's responsible for the technical side of it, like getting our tech stack in order, like our workflow in Outplay, for example. Like, what's that going to look like? What's going to be our cadence? How's that going to be set up? Have 3 people in the pod that are responsible for outbound, but give them specific role types and let them become masters of that. And then that will give you the opportunity to have someone who's in charge of something. So they're not just doing the mundane task of booking meetings. They're actually in charge of research. They're in charge of the tech stack. They're in charge of what we say when we get on the phone or when we send an email out. And then that core team has one responsibility, and that's pipeline. If that works, you've got not only an onboarding program that'll morph from that, you also have something that you can replicate and scale out. Now you can go get another pod because the first process or concept worked. You proved that model. Now you can safely go do it again and do it with a little bit more confidence. That's how I would approach it in today's world.
That's a brilliant piece of advice, right? I mean, bring that balance across multiple things, right? And if I were to read between lines, would these, the early joiners or the first timers in the company, they potentially become team leaders or managers of that, probably that expertise that they probably build over the few months or years?
Yeah, I mean, for early stage, certainly. I mean, the people that join as BDRs are most likely not going to be BDRs forever, right? They're going to go on to be salespeople. They might go into customer success. They might
Yeah.
develop a passion for product marketing. They just love the product. Let them
Yeah.
go there. They've done a great job of collecting the voice of the customer, so you can build a great product. Let them go live in that group. So that's the cool part about it. But you got to start somewhere. When you're a bigger company, deciding on when you're going to build a BDR team, there's so many
It's
different factors that come into play
absolutely
for that.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And you probably have the funds and the money to also do that, to hire experts who probably have
Oh
dirtied
yeah.
their hands enough to know that they need to do this, right? But that kind of also comes back to another interesting question, right? When you have the first three hires, BDRs, SDRs in your team, what would be, while you also kind of create that balance, one taking care of the tech stack, one taking care of process, one probably doing some kind of data mining and things like that,
Yeah.
what would be the early role and responsibilities in general for those SDRs, BDRs?
It depends where the business is. If you're pre round raise, pre seed, pre series A, we work with these types of companies all of the time, which claim to have a solid grip and understanding of who their ICP is, the value, the messaging. They have convinced themselves that what they have is absolutely needed by the intended buyer. And I think that is a miscalculation that a lot of early stage founders make, and they do it often. So I do believe that those early stage BDRs and SDRs, they have to be information gatherers. They have to be folks that create brand awareness, test different pitches for value alignment and pain product fit. All of those things have to be. So if you're willing to be patient as a founder, you can go get somebody or people to become BDRs and SDRs with the understanding that in the first 6 months or so, they're going to be responsible for collecting information.
Yeah.
You can't say, listen, you're after a month of being here in the role, your job now is to go book me 10 meetings a week.
Yeah.
If that's what you want, fine, you can do that. And people are going to listen to this, conversation between you and I and disagree with me wholeheartedly. And I understand that, but that's how I would do it, especially if it's like a tech product, like SaaS.
Yeah.
You got to really kind of figure out who should be buying our stuff before you pitch random people who aren't a good fit.
Right. But tell me this, how do you typically go about identifying the right ICP for your product or for your service, right? Because, or, what would be the ideal size of, customers that you need to go after, or prospects that you need to go after to identify that, yes, this is an ICP? Because there's always analogies, right? Today, for example, Outplay could be selling to SMBs and mid-market, but we have enterprise customers as well, right? We have customers who have 100 seats, 200 seats with us as well, correct? But then, our sweet spot is something that we need to identify and double down on that.
Yeah.
Correct? So how would you typically go about identifying the right ICP?
Yeah. So I love the question, and I think it can be answered in many different ways. My answer would be leveraging interviews, and I'll kind of explain what I mean by that a little bit more. We often work with founders, again, who say, here's our ICP, we know it, here's our product, we are absolutely convinced, reach out to these people, get us meetings. And when it doesn't work, because it always, or not always, it happens where we start the journey of doing outbound for them, and we're like, wait a second, 2 weeks in or so, like, this is not the right person. We've heard no way too many times. We've received way too many rejections, objections, and excuses. Something's not right here. We have a targeting issue. This is not the right person. And I've dealt with so many companies as the founder of SalesGevity, and I've dealt with this as a sales leader in other businesses. You probably can do this as well. After a certain amount of time, you have this keen sense, this like innate ability to say, we're definitely talking to the wrong person. You know it inside in your mind, but now you have to like articulate that to the founders or to the other stakeholders and explain to them why. That's the challenging part. Like, hey, here's why we're talking to the wrong person. And it can't because I know what I'm talking about. I've been down this road before. You got to quantify it. So a great way to do that is say, listen, let's go find people that were in our space prior, maybe started companies like ours, we're salespeople in companies that are similar to ours that are no longer there, but doing something else, right? Let's get them on the phone. Let's put a gifting program in place. They get a gift card in exchange for taking a 30-minute intake interview with us, where we get to ask them questions that the founders have put together that we think will get us to the point where we actually will know who our buyer is. Yeah. And shockingly, a lot of people will volunteer. Like, people love to come on podcasts and shows, and people love to talk and share their wisdom. And if you throw some money at them or give them a gift, they're definitely going to do it. But those are that's like the voice of customer, voice of prospect, voice of user, voice of entrepreneur, a voice of somebody that can really give you back like peer-to-peer information that'll let you know, hey man, are we on the right path or not? And I like interviews. I just like, you got to talk to people.
Yeah. But Ryan, I mean, I'm kind of diverting a little bit here, right? Because at SalesGevity, you do business development as a service itself, right? You have a BDR team who do for several companies, right? Yeah. What are the top 3 questions that you ask the product team or the founders to know your ICP, or even at least understand this is the kind of market, or this is the kind of persona that I need to go after, right? Yeah. Do you have like a set of questions? I'm sure you do. I would like to, like all our listeners also to understand, what are those questions you ask the product team? Because earlier you said, right, you talk to some set of people and then you get a lot of rejections. There is also a maker's bias here. Right? Yeah. As a founder, I have bias that this product is the most important one for this team and so on. But targeting becomes wrong there, correct? So what typically should you ask as a salesperson or as a BDR manager, BDR, whatever? What few questions would you ask the product team to understand a little more on ensuring that your targeting is, if not bullseye, at least close to that? Yeah.
So it's rare that we talk to someone from the product team, but we have been in that situation before, and it has paid massive dividends in our efforts, because talking to someone from the product team, the builders, right? Those people are going to give you like the application, why it's used, how it's used, and then the value that one can get from using it. That's really important for someone like myself, a BDR, a salesperson, anyone that's going out there and pitching Outplay or SalesGevity or any SaaS product that you want to pitch, right? Or any like sales enablement platform. What I always ask, I'm usually on the phone with the CRO, founder, or marketing. All 3 at the same time, a combination of 2 or 1. I always say, what do you have in place right now for assets? If I were to start at your company as a BDR on day 1, I'm just a BDR. What can you put in my hand to weaponize me so I can go out and do my job? What do you have? Yeah. They have a deck. They've got a couple customers, maybe a case study from 2019 from their first customer that's no longer their customer anymore. There's all kinds of stuff that they give you. Yeah. And you can start to draw some conclusions from that and formulate some questions. You can say, okay, look, based on what you're giving me, when was this modified, changed, altered, created? Is this new? Is this old? Like, are you adjusting your messaging as you grow and learn more? Usually the answer is no. They're going off of like an old use case or an old pitch. And that tells me right away that they probably don't have ICP or product market fit necessarily like locked in and ready to go. So from there, I basically can formulate from who they want to target. That's my next question. Like, who do you want to go after? What's your desired audience? Do you have this list? Have you built this list? A lot of them do. They'll come to us with 1,000 companies that they have to get into. Those are their tier 1s. And then my next question is, why are these accounts your tier 1s? And you're going to get all kinds of answers. The ones who tell you, well, these are our tier 1 accounts because we have 6 customers that look exactly like these 1,000 customers. Great. Awesome answer. I can go with that. If it's, these are the customers we want to go after because we have to prove that we can sell in the enterprise before we can raise a Series A, I'm going to kind of have like an oh no moment for a second. Think, okay, how am I going to help them? Because now what they're going to put on me is go get us meetings with these companies, because the outcome or the milestone we're trying to get here is Series A. And it's predicated upon our ability to sell enterprise. So I'm kind of all over the place with my answer, but there's no template for discovery with companies when you're doing outbound. Everyone has a different story. Believe it or not, everyone has a different goal or agenda, a different problem, We've walked into every situation I think we could have possibly walked into at this point. So the questions and the way that I frame them, I just adjust accordingly based on experience. I know salespeople don't want to hear that. You got to have your discovery process, but I've been around for a long time. So I treat everyone the way that they should be treated.
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, while you said that you were all over the place, I think it kind of boils down to the fact that you got to keep asking those questions repeatedly till the time you kind of know what's your target audience, right? What is the importance of alignment here, right? I mean, alignment with multiple teams. You said, let's say, they bring you the Tier 1 companies. If they have like 5 to 6 customers who've been with the product, using the product for a long time, they bring that. This probably comes from the CS team. Probably the marketing team comes with battle cards, right? Saying that this is how we compare ourselves with the other, or or things like that. So how important is alignment here, especially around ensuring all of them carry the same message? A lot of times I've seen SaaS products, the website tells you one thing. When I go on a demo with an account executive, the fit is totally different, or what they say is different, right? So how do you achieve that alignment?
Yeah, that drives me crazy. I learned about alignment way back in the day when I was at HubSpot as a salesperson, and I was introduced to the concept of smarketing, which is sales and marketing. And the executives in the company would get in front of us in a town hall format, and they would walk us through what sales is doing, what marketing is doing, and how those two worlds align and how they're working together. And that synergistic relationship that both leaders had, Mark Roberge, Mike Volpe. And I saw that firsthand. And I've been changed forever by it, because I believe that marketing and sales have to have an SLA, product engineering. They all kind of come along with that process as well. And then the sales team has one unified message that matches exactly what the website looks like. I have always said this. I'm old school. You don't need a sales deck when you can just go to your website, throw up a Zoom, and walk your customer through your website. Your website should be your most powerful sales tool. If it's not, you're doing it wrong. If it is, that tells me that sales and marketing and product engineering, executive leadership, finance, HR, everybody, they're all on the same page. You could tell right away by the website. So that is, definitely important. The other stance that I've taken in the last year is I believe that SDR, BDR, outbound should answer and roll up into marketing if marketing exists in a company. If I were BDR applying for a job at a company today, one of my second questions, my first or second questions, probably my second question would be, do you have a marketing team in place? How big is the team? What is their core role and function? What are they responsible for? How are they measured? Because that'll tell me going in how much support I'm going to receive. Because most BDRs and SDRs under a sales organization, they're receiving coaching and feedback, but they're not receiving the ammunition, the supplies, the knowledge, and the domain expertise that marketing is going to be able to manufacture for them. So that's the alignment that I tend to think of and lean towards and focus more on nowadays.
Marketing. I mean, that's a new phrase for me.
I've
not heard of that, but that's good. But it works, right? I mean, that's true even today. I mean, might be old school, but certain things, old things die hard, so it still works. And I think founders today should continue that, right? But tell me this. I mean, you have handled sales, marketing at multiple places. GTM is something that you live and breathe. What are the challenges that you think that small businesses or early stage businesses might face when building this outbound team from scratch, and how should they overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, the concept of burning a candle at both ends exists in pretty much every single startup, but I think patience and lack thereof is the biggest killer of any process or any movement or anything that you're trying to achieve. You're balancing impatience with aggressive cash burn and a lot of expensive experiments, i.e. the BDR team and the early BDR team, the pioneers. They end up being a loss proposition because there's a lot of experimentation that takes place in the beginning. You might be able to attest to that from your early days. Like, you probably spent a lot of time and energy and money trying a bunch of things that ultimately didn't work. You may have learned things from that, but you can't get that money back. So, and it's hard. Like, oh my, we just burned a bunch of cash. Now we have to go raise more. Do we raise more? Do we get sales? Do we borrow money? All the things that I thought about in the beginning, like what was I going to do before we had our first 3 customers? So yeah, that's patience. Patience is a big one. I mean, the hardest part of my job is client expectations and managing patience. That's all I do. I mean, I'm more of a consultant and an advisor than we are a tactical execution of just outbound itself. It's a lot of expectations.
Yeah, but again, I mean, that actually was my next question, right? How long should a CEO wait till the time he or she sees results? Patience is important, but then there needs to be a time where they say, okay, this is working, this is not working, or if it's not working, my next question would be, how do you think a CEO must dissect the process? How
Yeah.
should they postmortem the process to see what went wrong? Correct. Where
Yeah.
should they start? Because that's where I know many times CEOs, sometimes or a couple of users of Outplay themselves, they start with, say, a one-person salesperson, one-person sales team, and say, hey, looks like it's not working. Right. And I'm sure
Yeah.
you also have that pressure when, considering that you're an outsourced business development agency, you have
Yeah.
that pressure from your customer saying that, hey, something is not working for me. Can you figure out? And 2-3 months, and when they don't see results, when they don't see meetings or opportunities in their CRM, they kind of panic. So what typically would you say that this is the time where CEOs need to check a strategy for? How long should they, invest on a particular strategy? And if it's not working, how should they dissect it?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have an onboarding process in place and a foundation for an SDR team or BDR or outbound team to catapult themselves off of or like work off of, I believe within 90 days, you'll have a sense of whether or not this is working. And is it working where the program itself is not working? Is it not working because we need more training for our BDRs? Is it not working because we made bad hires? Those things you can pretty much ascertain quickly. But if you're going to actually have all that stuff like onboarding and a foundation and product market fit and things that based on critical feedback and insights that you're going in the right direction, you have a good product, people are going to buy it, the market is reacting positively to you, then you got to give it 6 months. And you can't freak out until like month 5.
Yeah.
It doesn't take long to wind down an SDR program. It doesn't take long to, relieve somebody from their duties.
Agreed.
But it does take a long time to find out if something is worth pursuing. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah. And while we are recording in this month, right, I mean, market economic conditions aren't being the best. Do you think patience of 6 months also can become 9 months? Is it too long, or you feel that people are still out there buying, and especially around the SMB space, right?
I keep saying that I'm old school. If I see somebody that's working really hard and is really passionate and like lives and breathes Outplay, you just know that they're your person. They're culturally ingrained. They believe in the mission and they're never going to give up. Then don't give up on them. But if there's someone who is, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, kind of likes the product, is not really a master of it, isn't getting better with every single call, every single pitch, every single value prop or demo, you got a problem. Progress can be made in incremental steps. It can be made rapidly, but if it's like stagnant and there's no growth and the person's paralyzed and not moving forward, and you can apply that same philosophy or methodology to the model itself of an outsourced or outbound team.
Understand. All right. Okay. So Ryan, digressing a little bit again here, right? When somebody's starting up an outbound function, what should be the tech stack like? I might be biased here and say Outplay is a must-have, but let me hear it from you.
All right. So I'm not going to name vendors.
Yeah.
Because obviously Outplay is the only choice. You guys are the only choice that you have to make. I think that with data providers is the biggest one. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And to pigeonhole yourself into one data provider is catastrophic. I know the trend right now is to reduce the tech stack, to reduce spend. I think that's a foolish move because you have to have, just like our government here in the States, it's a system, supposedly a system of checks and balances. You have multiple branches of government that check on each other. I look at that as like, you have to have these data sets who check on each other, pin them against each other, take a list out of one data provider, throw it into a validator and see what that validator says about that data provider. Did that list go from 1,000 valid names to 650 or whatever the number is? If it did, then you have a discrepancy with the original source that said all 1,000 were verified. Go back to their product team and say, what's going on here? The bounce rates were high when I went with your list only, but when I went and cleaned it with the third-party provider here, my bounce rates were less than 1% and my open rates went up. So mobile numbers, same thing, right? I always say have 2 or 3 data providers on hand for mobile numbers. Don't just count on one mobile number provider. So it's the data stuff. I also, we're an agency, so we send email sequences off of 3 different platforms. I won't mention them, but we off 3 different platforms. Why do we do that? Performance reasons. One platform has a client side white label that our clients can log in and look at. For me, expectation wise and management wise, I don't have to worry about them. They can log in and look at their own reporting. So, there's different functions, or different technologies for different functions. But I think data is the biggest one, and data is like really bad right now across the board. I don't care, who's out there. Data's been tough, and it's not because the data providers stink. It's because there's a lot of movement in these companies. The people that we want to sell to are changing jobs every 12 to 18 months.
Yeah.
So like, how do we stay on top of that? It's hard.
It's hard. Yeah, it is. Yes, agree. So it's data providers are the key, right? And Outplay kind of integrates with a few today.
And I think if you get a system like Outplay, it's, you have to say to yourself, listen, we're going to make calls out of Outplay. Our emails are out of Outplay. All of our integrations are out of Outplay. Like, we have to have our system of truth. That's our main system that everything is distributed from. Yeah. But all the stuff that kind of circles around it to support it, I think you have to have a multi-vendor approach there.
Yeah. Nice. Good. How do you anticipate the role of outbound teams evolving in the future, right? So many changes in communication trends, technologies, ChatGPT, definitely, in the foray, every salesperson is using that. Phones, everybody also know that cold calling is the thing to go, but when as leaders, we receive cold calls, depending on the mood, we react differently. So how do you see the entire, the spectrum of outbound teams evolving?
Great question. I love it. Actually, it's my favorite question on the list that I have here that was provided. I think that what we're going to see, and what I hope to see, I hope to see this. I hope to see a little more distribution of age and experience within the team itself. I want to see the days of out of college, wet behind the ears, fresh faces, new to a job in general, becoming SDRs and BDRs. And it's for 2 reasons. You can ruin someone's sales career by hiring them too soon and then putting them into an environment where they're not supported. You can catapult and excel someone's career who's young by bringing them into an environment that is very diverse in age and experience. That's how I learned. My first job was very similar to yours. I came out of college. I was a door-to-door salesman. I was cold calling out of the yellow pages. The sales guy next to me was 60 years old. I was 22. The wealth of knowledge that person was able to give to me just by me listening to him on the phone, no one could ever teach me that. And I want to see younger people blend and mesh in with older people from all different walks of life and different experiences. But when it comes to the business side of it, you have to have people that want to be in business development, are really good business developers, and they happen to have been doing it for a long time, because it's going to bring everybody up, right? Like, it's going to raise the tide for everybody. And that's where I hope the future goes. I hope we see a nice distribution and more balance and the removal of ageism in the outbound space, because there's like this stigma that it's a young person's game, when in fact it's the antithesis of that. I think it's an experienced person's game now.
Lovely. Bringing experience and the energy of a newbie together is the way to go. Wonderful, Ryan. Thank you so much for those lovely words. It was great having you. Any closing remarks for listeners out there?
No, I mean, just thank you again for having me. Obviously I could talk about this stuff, forever. I'm a huge fan of you guys, and I love when you do the cold call challenge awards thing that you do. I'm like, I think it's really cool. Because you put a bright light on basically anyone who is in that space, and you give them an opportunity to showcase their skills, and you really help their careers. So hats off to you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Ryan. Thank you so much for being here today. And I'm sure I personally learned a lot of things. I wish I spoke
Oh,
to you about a year back when I was creating the Outbound team for Outplay. I would have done it a little more better than what it is in the shape it is in today. But
great.
nevertheless, once a salesperson, always a salesperson. I'm going to be doing it for I don't know a few more years till I decide to hang my boots. I'm sure the same with you. Thanks so much for those lovely words and about Outplay as well. And thank you so much. Great having you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. That was Outbound for Dummies. And I'm sure you enjoyed this day with Ryan. And we'll meet soon with another amazing episode of Outbound for Dummies. Thank you so much.